Hello, Ancestry cousins and Inquiring minds. I'm back with another video. This time I'm going to be talking about my third great grandfather, Lloyd Johnson, born free in Washington, D.C. I previously made the video, didn't like it, took a while to redo this video because it's very informative. So it actually has three parts. So we're going to start with readings. It's going to focus on creating stories from newspapers, although it will include sources like, excuse me, the census, maybe even city directories, but NPS, National Park Service. Okay, so the first one we're going to read is from um, it's from the Evening Star, October 31st, 1851. I'm sorry, 1854, because we're talking about a free person in Washington, D.C. So it's Lloyd Johnson. Oh, watch returns. Lloyd Johnson, free Negro, for disturbing a religious meaning fined. So that's all it has in this one because we're going to build up a character for him. Okay, so the next thing I find for him, and we're going to do this chronologically, so we're going to read his manumission letter. District of the Washington City on the 16th day of September 1858. Personally appearing Benjamin L. Bogan before the subscriber, the Justice of the Peace, in and for the city of the district, uh, appeared, it's in cursive, it's hard to read, and made oath to this holy, I never figured out this word, of mighty God, that he is well acquainted with a dark chestnut colored man named Lloyd Randolph Johnson, about 23 years of age, and knows him to be free and born free in the city of Washington, D.C. Okay. So then we'll have in this tree too, I was able to get his fine from NPS, which National Park Services. They have that he was his place of birth. All of that record is on the NPS website. And it says that he was 23, black laborer. He enlisted in Washington September 16th, 1858. So the day that he enlisted to join the military is the day, as a landsman. He's a landsman, but he's listed as a laborer. He's 5'8". So that gave me more of a definition for him on this. He's 5'8", he's chestnut colored, and he joined for 3 years. Okay, then I'll also have a link in there in the video where it's got different images from the different people that appeared in there, which it was supposed to be colored. So when you look at these images, just look at the images. That's all I would say. I'm gonna put the link in there, and I'm not gonna talk about it. So we're gonna move on to the next article, which is Evening Star 1860, 1861. Disturbing gathering. The officers of the Northern Liberty Police District of Saturday night made a descent on the house of Joe Fletcher, a colored man who lives on 5th Street between G and H, and grabbed a crowd of fellows who were playing cards. The parties arrested were Samuel Dennison, Lloyd Johnson, Bernard West, William Woodward, Basil Harrington, something Hensel Meikle, and Anthony Selby. William Bowie and John Fletcher were also arrested for stealing 2 hogs, one of which was alive and the other just butchered as the officers entered. These 2 were committed by Justice Clark for a further hearing, and the others were some to be fined and others sent to the workhouse. It's really dark, so some of these articles are hard to read. Okay, so just to mention what's funny is because, all these characters that I looked at in that story, I was like, okay, so are they just random people? Well, no, because Samuel Dennison is actually on the 1870 census with my grandfather. They're listed as like neighbors. He's up, but he's white. He's not black. So just to put a different image of how DC may have, you may think of images about the separation and stuff. We have to think about individuality. Okay. So the next one we're just gonna talk about, because the stories that we're going to be talking about is going to be about this right here is about a time during the Civil War. So I want to read two articles to you from Fort Stevens. The reason why I picked Stevens is because it's the closest to my ancestral home, my family home, or they're not my ancestors, but they're my family. And I know that area very much. So Fort Stevens is straight up 7th Street, which became Georgia Avenue. Okay, so yet later, the main body of the rebel infantry joined the rebel force in front on last night. The rebels erect a 6-gun battery in the course of the night, and they show themselves in the strong scrimmaging lines today. Okay, so this article is from, where did I put it? Okay, July 12th, 1854. So we're going to do two stories, so it's going to be 12th and the 13th, okay? Oh, that wasn't the one I wanted to read. Where is that? The conditions, the conditions of last night, the fighting on the 7th Street Road. Rebel sharpshooters dislodged the enemy attempt to plant a battery, but the shelled away policemen and other citizens take a hand in the fighting. Policemen and the citizens take a hand in the fighting. The heavy scrimmage in front of Fort Stevens, in the vicinity of the 7th Street Road yesterday afternoon, continued until after dark. The rebels held a position in the woods from which they threw out scrimmagers, who crept along the ground and fired from behind trees. At one time, they succeeded in getting within range of the fort, and their sharpshooters were unable to pick off our gunners, two of whom were wounded. The rebels used no artillery, but their movements indicated that they were endeavoring to plant a battery to bear on Fort Stevens, lately known as Fort Massachusetts, and in order to frustrate their designs for the shells. Occasionally amongst them, about 6:30, our cavalry charged upon them, which had the effect of driving them back some distance. The scrimmaging was still kept up. However, the little of 7 o'clock, our infantry was brought up and placed in front of Fort Stevens, while the cavalry deployed to the right. The object of this movement, or its results, was not known when we left the vicinity of the scene of action last night. So they got somebody sitting up there watching and recording what's going on and reporting in the news. The house of F.P. Blair had been burnt, as reportedly yesterday. The rebels appeared to be using it as a hospital, and they were seen to carry some of their wounded in it. The houses of Miss Reeves and Mrs. Ken Carberry and other side of 7th Street Road were occupied by rebel sharpshooters who annoyed some troops somewhat. During the afternoon, they picked off 3 of our sergeants, shooting them through the head. It was found necessary to destroy quite a number of houses on either side of the 7th Street Road to prevent them from being occupied by rebel sharpshooters. Among the houses destroyed was Monsignor's, Richard Butt's, William Bell's, J.S. McChesney's, Mr. Shoemaker's, and a house accompanied by the family of the late William M. Morrison. Time, however, was allowed for the owners of these to remove their furnishings, and the road leading to the city was lined with wagons conveying it to a place of safety. The farmers in the vicinity lost the most of their stock, owing, as they say, to our pickets refusing to let the drivers pass through the lines without a permit. The farmers had taken the precaution to drive their stock towards the city as the rebels advanced, but not being allowed to enter, it fell to the hands of the enemy. So they got their stock, which that's what they do in war. They need to eat something, so the eat was there. Several citizens, policemen, and others took active part in the engagement, prominent among whom were Augustus Morton, Mr. P. Chesney, and officers Booth and Bill. A number of our soldiers were overcome by the heat, as were also several citizens who had walked out to the scene of action to witness the engagement. Early in the evening, thousands of persons could be seen passing on 7th Street by every conceivable means of conveyance while the road was literally lined with pedestrians. The hills, trees, and fences without sight of Fort Stevens were covered with human beings, quite a number of whom were ladies, quietly seated in a carriage at a commanding post was Secretary Seward viewing the progress of affairs. And then it goes to another story. So it just, when you hear about the Civil War and then you read about the different articles in the newspaper, it just gives you a different perspective. So I'm not going to read. Okay, yeah, maybe right. The charge of the rebels last night, they were driven a mile up. The heaviest fighting yesterday, so this is the next day, the 13th, on July 13th, 1864. The charge of the rebels, same newspaper, Evening Star. The heaviest fighting yesterday was in front of Fort Stevens was between 5 and 7 o'clock in the evening, when it was determined to dislodge the rebel sharpshooters who were making themselves mischievous, annoying from the Carberry place, and especially from the house of Mr. Lay, better known as Carberry House on Rock Creek to the left of Fort Stevens. To dislodge the sharpshooters from the house of shell sent from Fort Stevens by the skillful gunners of the 6th Maine Artillery was lodged in the cupola of the Carberry House, firing the building and sending the rebels skedaddling from their shelter like many rats. Thus, movement was followed by a charge on the rebels' position by a portion of the 1st Division of the veteran 6th Corps, executed by brilliant style on a double quick by which the rebels were wholly dislodged from scrimmaging position they had therefore held with such tenacity and driven perhaps half a mile and a half. We lost 3 or 4 of our in this affair and captured several prisoners. The rebels lost some 5 or 6 killed and perhaps as many more wounded. The Carberry House is supposed to have been entirely destroyed. It was burning at the last hour last night in front of Fort Slocum. Now, I didn't even know, never paid attention. Fort Slocum is straight down 4th Street, and it's on the way to Tacoma. And I've passed it so many times, but never really paid attention to it. The rebel skirmishes were not so active, but whenever they showed themselves significant numbers, the fort treated them to a shell dance. Sorry, it's straight. When I would go to the pool at Tacoma, I always went down 5th Street. I never went down 4th Street and down Kansas Avenue, which is the route that he gave me to find, to go to Tacoma Pool. And that's how I saw where Fort Slocum was. I was like, oh, it's right there. Yeah. Okay. The Fort Slocum fired during the day between 30 and 40 shells, and whenever they fell among the rebels, they were seen to run in all directions. The main force of the rebels kept prudently in the woods and only showed themselves in any numbers when they relieved their scrimmagers. So when they was out there, they would come and get them. Late in the evening, when the heaviest fighting was going on, dense clouds of dust could be seen in the rear of the rebels, indicating one of 2 things: either that the rebels were failing back or, can't read that line, and passing along the line of their fortifications from Fort Bunker Hill to Fort Stevens. Late in the evening, we found the impression to be amongst the military folk that the rebels were retreating towards Rockville and Edwards Ferry, and the columns of dust about sunset seemed to be receding to the northwest direction. Our entire loss of 2 days scrimmaging will not amount to more than 50 in killed, wounded, or missing. That of the army is of course unknown, but is double less heavier than ours, from the fact that many of the shells thrown from the fort burst in their midst. Yesterday, the 8th Illinois Cavalry had 3 wounded men wounded. I go too fast. For several hours yesterday, a rebel officer mounted on a horse could be seen riding in and out of the woods fronting Fort Stevens. During this time, he was a perfect target for our men, but all attempts to dismount him was proved fruitless. A member of the 76th New York Regiment took up a position in a tree where hence he picked off 6 of the rebel sharpshooters. President Lincoln and Mrs. Lincoln passed along the line of the city defenses in a carriage last night and were warmly greeted by the soldiers whenever they made their appearance amongst them. The night was beautiful, a peaceful moonlight, and a large proportion of the population of the city was out to a late hour, waiting in anticipation that the rebels might make some demonstration of pursuance in their old tactics of night attacks. Considerable attention was attracted by the signaling going on between the different stations at Soldiers' Home, 19th Street, and elsewhere, and especially the brilliant lights displayed from the tower of the Soldiers' Home were seen from a long distance. I don't know about the Soldiers' Home on 19th Street. That's on 19th Street. So we know that my grandfather had volunteered for the Civil War. There's a Civil War going on in Washington. There's forts all around it. All right, we'll move to the next one. So the next one we're going to talk, so just read the article. A 6th precinct. Lloyd Johnson, assault and battery, intent to kill, jail for court. This was Evening Star, October the 6th, 1863. Okay. This October the 7th, 1863. Assault and battery. On Sunday, Lloyd Johnson, colored, was arrested by a roundsman's shield for assault and battery with intent to kill Walter Clark, a soldier of the 2nd District Regiment. The affair occurred in Goat Alley, northern part of the 3rd Ward, about 1 o'clock p.m., and the case was heard by Justice Peck. Clark and another colored man had a fuss in the alley, which was quelled, and they separated. The prisoner came up sometime afterward and, without provocation, threw a brick and struck Clark on the head, inflicting a severe wound and laid Clark out for dead in the alley. The prisoner said he and the man who first had the disturbance with Clark belonged to a secret order and are bound to aid and defend each other. And it was this organization that induced him to do as he had done. Justice Peck committed him to jail for court in default of $100 bail. The soldier was picked up by 4 citizens and his wound was dressed, and after recovery significantly was sent to his regiment. Okay, so his regiment, like I said, he was the 2nd Regiment of the District of Columbia Infantry. You can find him on NPS website. He was, says he fought for the Union Company E. He was a private. All right, so the Union District of Washington, D.C. was volunteers. So it's, and you could see when they, if you looked it up, you could see when they started. So the next one is, so I guess that he probably got fined, because sometimes when you're looking through these articles, it doesn't exactly tell you what all happened. So I wanted to tell you that Walter Smith, I had a few articles about him, and in most of them, there's 4 articles that he basically was a military menace. So he was often a drunk, and they would have to take him back to his quarters. So I just read like 1 or 2 of them, which I didn't open, but I'll open it now. All right, so it says in precinct number 5, he is listed William Clark, intoxicated, fined $2. William Clark, resisting officer, dismissed. And then in another one, this may be him. William, precinct number 6, Walter Clark and John Finn, disorderly, turned over to the military. So actually the one at the top in Ward 5 probably wasn't him, but they had the same name. So And his name was William. I just didn't catch that. So I did when I saved this initially. So it's Walter Clark. And what I did notice was disorderly turned over to the military. And so that was repeated. That I looked him up. It was he was drunken and disorderly on June 30th, 1863, July 1st, 1863, September 9th, 1863, and September 15th, 1863. Now, to go to the thing of why did my grandfather brick him? I think he would be basically his infantry. Would that be considered army? And my grandfather would be Navy. Now the oath thing, I don't know, but I will tell this little brief story about. I know that military people do have a beef with their thinking that their branch of the military is better. And I'm only speaking from my experience with my stepdad and my dad. I had invited them over for dinner for Father's Day one day. And my stepdad was kind of like, he had to prove a point to my dad because he was there in my life when my father was not. I didn't. So they got into this beef about Army versus Navy. And my dad's comment was, yes, I slept in clean white sheets every night. That was my father. So as opposed to my stepdad, who was in the Army, that was probably driving through the mud and all this kind of stuff. And his response, yes, I slept in clean white sheets every night. You can't fight against that. We're like, no. So that is the first story. I did not realize that it would take that long. So let me speed this up. All right. So the second story is about his dog fighting. So there were several articles in the newspaper that I would find that would tell me that he was a dog fighter, and this was one of his hustles. So in his court with Judge Snell, it's always under George Snell. He's listed down in here, Evening Stars, 1874. Let's see. Guy Berkeley cutted larceny of a dog from Lloyd Johnson worth $20. Lloyd testified that the dog was stolen from him at his place near Howard University. He valued it as $20. It was a good fighter. It was in his evidence when he tried to sell the dog, fined $20. Now, what makes me think that this is exactly him? Okay, let me tell you. I looked at, so there's two more articles. But what I did was I looked at Ancestry, U.S. City Directory, and it has him, and it's two articles about that, by the way. And one of them, he was charged by Judge Snell, Lloyd Johnson, charged with keeping a dangerous dog, and he was charged $10 or 30 days in jail. So in 1870, he was living in Ward 4, and he is listed as a whitewasher. And where did I go back? I left something out. In the city directory. Let's see what it is. Let's see, I missed something here. Let me click that. I tried to put everything in order that I was going to share tonight so it could come up. Come on. All right. Oh, here we go. So the city directory, let's look for him. So Lloyd, okay, list is him. Where we are. Okay. So the city director for 1875 lists Lloyd Johnson as the whitewasher in Howardtown, Northwest. So that's another thing. So I know he got in fights with, the military. He was passing liquor through the door. He was just a hustler. That's all I would say. He was a hustler. So the last thing that I want to talk about is, which doesn't really have anything to do with him, it's the people that's on his census. So we would see name changes among my people, which make it more difficult to trace people. So on his census, he has no, this is not the last story. All right, well, it will be. He has people that his daughter and his wife. So in 1870, his daughter's name was Mary Letitia. Her name was Mary Letitia Johnson. In 1880, she was Mary L. Johnson. In 1900, No, in 1870, she was Letitia M. Johnson. In 1880, she was Mary L. Johnson. In 1900, she was Lou Barnes, and she married William Barnes, and they were living at 70 P Street Northwest. And her mother was now living with her, and her name is Lizzie. So Google, I went to Google Maps, which I always do, and to see how far the distance is between there, because I noticed that family doesn't like to move. They try to stay in the same area. So 41 O Street is the 3-minute walk to number 70 P Street. Okay, so his wife, Lloyd Randolph Johnson's wife, Elizabeth Donaldson Johnson, in 1860, she was Elizabeth Donaldson. In 1870, she was Mary E. Johnson. In 1880, she was Elizabeth Johnson, but in 1900, she was Lizzie Johnson. So I'm thinking this may have been her in 1910 at the insane asylum, but I'm not sure. So we're going to go back 1 second, because I'm going to try to make these videos to keep them under 30 minutes. The last story that I was going to tell, which I said that was the last one, but I skipped one, is a fight with John Merritt. So when I first was looking for my grandfather, Lloyd Randolph Johnson, I found a building permit in 1877. So I said, oh, Granddaddy owns some property. Let me see. We had a house. Did you see the free black man owned a house at that time? So I don't know, because they also had, let's click this. Oh, that's not the one I want. Where we go? Okay, so we had these different articles. I think I need to close some of these windows. Give me a second, because I'm getting confused. Too many windows. All right, we talked about that one. Get out of here. Dog. Oh. Okay. All right, who's over here? Okay. All right. Wait. So we had this building permit issued by the Inspector of Buildings, Lloyd Johnson, repaired on the 2-frame house O between North Capitol and First Streets Northwest, $100. I mean, I own a property, so when I have stuff done, I have to have a building permit. So then we have this article, July 8th, 1880. Sorry, my phone is in the center, so sometimes I have to lean over to try to get it to see everything that I'm looking at. And this says that Lloyd Johnson assault on John Merritt, $5 or 15 days. Okay, and James Johnson, colored. This is from the Critic, September 7th, 1881. James Johnson, who is the son of Lloyd, was today fined by Judge Snell $10 for cutting John Merritt with a knife, and an appeal was noted. Okay, so this is all about the complaint of nuisance. Case of poor drainage and sewage on O Street. John Merritt, an old colored man, called the Secretary Tinsley yesterday to know what he could do to protect himself from his neighbor's house, which drains into and under his own. Now, there's another article. Oh, okay. So he lives at 39, but there's another one where he said he's fighting against his neighbor at number 37 too. He lives at 39 O Street Northwest, and the next building is number 41. The grade occupied by Letitia Johnson and family. Now, at this time in 1896, Granddaddy Lloyd is already gone. He died in 1887. It says he has no downspouts and no sewer. Whenever there is rain, the water pours onto the roof of number 49 onto his place. He called on the health officer for relief and was sent the inspector for buildings. It's kind of light. He called at the inspector office and was told number 41 would be condemned and ordered removed. That was some time ago, and nothing had been done. He went to the health officer yesterday, but referred to Dr. Tinsdale. Dr. Tinsdale told John if he could not get the search the neighbors condemned, he would better proceed against the owners for maintaining a nuisance. Mr. King of the inspector of the buildings said that, I can't make that up, the house at number 41 Old Street ought to be condemned, but he had been unable to find the owner so as to take the necessary steps for that purpose. So we had several newspaper articles of what was going on with my granddaddy. He was a rebel. And it's more. I mean, it's like I have like 30 something things in my tree all together. I was just putting a story together with a timeline of consistently what has been happening to him with his behavior, things that I saw. And it's just I was just so surprised to see, this activity, because from what I read in history, it just didn't seem that those type of things could be happening. Like there would be more of a harsh punishment for free people. So it's an eye opener to be able to read the things from newspapers as opposed, and I'm reading it myself as opposed to reading it from a book from someone else's perspective. So thank you for watching.